sneakerhead, homie, put your hands in the air. Close your eyes and reminisce about your favorite pair. Take a minute to answer, cause the question ain't fair. Probably had 2 or 3 that you love to wear. Probably had 1 or 2 that was multiple pairs. And probably had 1 pair that you never would wear. Yeah, you know what I mean. All you sneakerheads, here we go.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back on Time Sports Talk. I am Casey, the Remix Schedule, here to give you my take that you can only get on this right here on the Dallas Mavericks. This one is only about the Dallas Mavericks, and we're going to wrap up Thunder, Mavs. We're going to preview Minnesota, Mavs, matchups, defensive matchups. I think it's really interesting with Minnesota, as well as maybe who should have been the MVP. Nah, nah. I mean, when you play 5-on-8 and you overcome it, maybe you should be the MVP. Yeah, I said 5-on-8 in Game 6 for Mavs versus Thunder because those dudes in the referee uniforms, I think they might be from Oklahoma City or at least the state of Oklahoma. I don't know. But that man, brothers, that dude's got it out for Luka. I hope to not see him the rest of the playoffs because, oh man, that he he had it out for our boy Luka. But I have to say this, man. Do I think they're conspiring to keep Dallas out? No. It was just very interesting in that realm. Before I get to the actual game, of Dallas being home in Game 6, you have one of the best players in the league in Luka Doncic, MVP candidate. Came in third in the voting this year. Don't think that's going to be the case next year. But you can go on my Twitter and look. I obviously felt some sort of way about the refereeing because it just seemed so BS. Like, I'm not saying the league is scripted, but it really felt like, hey, we are going to have a game 7 because they want us to have a game 7. That's just what it felt like. I'm not sitting there. I'm not a conspiracy theorist when it comes to the NBA or NFL. And, maybe y'all can provide me evidence otherwise. But, you know, it felt like the Mavericks were playing 5-on-8 for the vast majority of that game. And until even that last foul from Shy on PJ Washington, when they were trying to break it down in slow motion, of at least the announcers, they were trying to make justification. Oh, he hit the ball first. But, well, yeah, but did y'all not see him follow through on his shooting arm? Like when he's shooting the ball, like, I don't know. It just, there's different rules in the NBA, which I think take away from the game of basketball. And some of the stuff that they talk about in their rule book and how to interpret it, I think is bull. And it's a bunch of hogwash. And that needs to be revisited by actual basketball people. Like the whole gathering the ball and James Harden being able to take like 8 steps after he's still picking up his dribble. That's terrible. Just example. You know. So, anyways, let's talk Mavs Thunder. So my prediction was right. If you watched the last video, you already know that I picked Dallas to win. I expect them to win in Game 6 and move on to the Western Conference Finals. I didn't expect that game to go down like that, winning 117 to 116, and having to hit free throws at the end to overcome that. And it was a very interesting game, back and forth. Thunder controlled the first half, Mavs controlled the second half. Thunder had 64 points at the half and a 9-point lead going into halftime. And the Mavericks in the second half outscored them 30 in the third quarter, 35 to 26 and 34 to 26. So game of runs, definitely. And the Mavericks had the last run there in the fourth quarter. I have to say it, and I've said it before, the Thunder, man, they're going to be a problem for a while. And it's really interesting to see what the Thunder are going to do in long term in the future. But for the next 4 or 5 years, that the Jalen Williams that starts, um, obviously Shy, um, and the rest of their guys, man, they have a young core there, and they have draft capital. They have cap space now. No free agent really wants to go to Oklahoma City, but yeah, they're going to be a problem for a long time. I would want to see them next year. I think if this is the year where they're so young in the playoffs with almost no playoff experience, being the youngest team in the league, I understand they're the 1 seed, but they're barely the 1 seed. Those top 3 seeds were jockeying until the last game. It's been proven by young teams don't win big in the playoffs. It just doesn't happen. You got to put some skins on the wall. There's some young teams that have made it farther than them. Orlando pops into my mind with Shaq and Penny Hardaway. Those were 2 generational talents on that team, and they're surrounded by great shooters and Dennis Scott and Nick Anderson. That was kind of a unique group. You know, the the '06, not '06, was it the '07 Cavaliers? That LeBron got the Cavs to the finals. That was a pretty young team, but he had still been in the league 4 or 5 years at that point. So you just don't have young teams who win in the playoffs. This ain't NBA 2K. This isn't a made up user player who is 99 overall and can't be stopped. You got to learn some things. And the Thunder learned some things, and they're going to use that to be even better moving forward. And it's going to be scary. I'm just saying, it's going to be scary. And, you know, Dallas took advantage of their experience, overcame a lot of adversity in that game because, like I said, it was 5-on-8 for most of that game. It felt like Derrick Jones Jr. coming up huge because the Dallas Mavericks have to have a third guy be huge for them. For a lot of the series, it was PJ Washington, and a lot of this playoffs. Last couple games, he came down to earth a little bit. I did say he was becoming a guy, but part of that process of becoming a guy is learning how to be consistent. And that's the difference between stars and role players or your average NBA player is any NBA player can go off for 20, 30, 40 points. I mean, you look through the annals of history, random guys will have 50-point games. But can they have it again? Can they do it again? That's what makes the great ones great is the consistency on averaging, 20 points, 25, 30 points a game or 10, 15 rebounds a game. Y'all get what I'm saying here. PJ's got to learn how to be consistent on this level. Okay, he was consistent with a bad team. Now he's got to learn how to be consistent on this level. But Derrick Jones Jr. was that guy in Game 6. He ended up with 22 points, shot the piss out of the ball, really good defense, and Mavericks got what they needed. Lively was huge in Game 6. His confidence has been boosted. There was a point in the playoffs where it was sketchy with him. And, he's 20-year-old kid, rookie in the NBA playoffs. Like I said, young guys normally struggle in that situation. He's had his bumps and bruises. He's also had some really good moments. That I don't know if it was a lob, but he caught one pass and he finished with the and one over Chet Holmgren. Like it wasn't a dunk. He got fouled, so it went off the backboard and went in. That was a huge play. I think that was in the fourth quarter when the Mavs were kind of, still making their comeback in their runs. So Lively had a big game. Gafford, I thought, was solid with 10 points, 7 rebounds. And, but Lively with 12 and 15, man, they were nasty. That's pretty, from the center position, that's awesome. And I think one of the underrated things that I think isn't talked about too much is the offensive rebound rate of the Dallas Mavericks, which I think is around 32, 33%, which is high. Your opponent as a stats person you generally want, as a team, you want to be defensively rebounding at 75 or higher percent. Well, obviously, their opponents aren't doing that because the Mavericks are averaging 33% offensive rebound rate. They're getting a lot more second looks than their counterparts, which really helps the Mavs in the long term, I think, especially going in the series. Now, trying to keep that up against the Minnesota Timberwolves with their poor man's Twin Towers, I don't know. That's going to be tough. But Jones had 22. Luka had another triple double, 29, 10, and 10. That's MVP stuff. I'm going to say it. He should have been the MVP. Not Shy, not Jokic, or Jokic. Sorry. It should have been Luka. And I think Luka does get a bad rap. He is the whiniest player in the league. I'll admit that. That dude whines, more than anyone. More than LeBron, more than Tim Duncan back in the day. You know, he's just always on the refs. And I think there was, games 4 and 5, he kind of laid off, but 6, he was back into it. Like, I know he's a young player, but he's an established player now. At this point, you got to let that stuff go. And so, but he had an MVP type game, 29, 10, and 10. I'll take that every night. Kyrie had 22. Not much in the assist department, but he did play solid defense. And, you know, there is one thing I'd like to point out that uh, I was, I kind of predicted and I thought needed to happen for the Mavericks to be continually successful. Even though the game after I said this, I think he went off for like 17 points. Tim Hardaway Jr. has to not play big minutes unless he's hitting a bunch of shots. Now, the problem with Tim Hardaway Jr. is he's generally a volume scorer. He gets better the more he shoots. But this isn't the time of the year for that. And if it was 100% consistency when it came to getting a certain number of shots, I think you play him. But even when he gets volume number of shots, he still has the potential to be super cold. And he doesn't provide that much on the defensive side of things. So, I was happy to see. I'm not happy in the fact I think Tim is a good dude, um, but I was happy that Jason Kidd, you know, kept him to 6 minutes in that game 6 because I think that was one of the underlying factors that helped the Mavericks win the game. All right, Minnesota, man. Let's transition to Minnesota, putting it on the defending champs with the 3-time reigning MVP in a game 7, down 20, and came back and won that game. When they were down 20, I know everyone in Denver is all like, all right, bring on the Mavs. Yeah, we feeling good. Then that happened. What happened was, like, that's what they're saying now is what had happened. What had happened, I'm going to be honest, is Anthony Edwards happened. And then the rest of the Timberwolves happened. And then you're at home. That's what had happened. So Anthony Edwards, man, he's gone from a star coming into the playoffs, being a highlight dude, to being a superstar, and he can make all the plays. He is a scary guy, and I think if there was a fantasy draft, like if we blew up all the teams in this offseason like you can in NBA 2K or any other sports game, is I think Anthony Edwards is a top 5 pick, if not top 2 or 3. Uh, I don't know right now who you would take over him. He might be my first pick. He's got that chip on his shoulder, the moxie, kind of like, hey, bring it. These are my boys. Bring yours to the park. We gonna go to battle. I like that. I don't like, some of Mayhe words some things, but that is what it is. That's just his personality. Now wearing the hat like that in the interview, post game conference, yeah, I could take that. But that's probably old man get off my lawn stuff. Personally, I'm just nitpicking here because I love his game. The dude's a beast. Now I mentioned Carl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert, poor man's Twin Towers because they are definitely not David Robinson and Tim Duncan for sure. That's almost an insult to the Admiral and the big fundamental when it comes to calling them the poor man's Twin Towers. But they are a matchup issue for the Mavericks. It's also a matchup issue for the Timberwolves in the realm of who does Gobert guard? Does he guard Gafford? Does he guard PJ Washington? In the starting lineup, I'm talking when Lively comes in, does he go Lively? Because the Mavericks love the lob. And I dare to say the Mavericks are a poor man's lob city right now. And that's not an insult to the Clippers. Is they love hitting that lob roll off of the pick and roll. And I think you might see Gobert playing off of the big and having Cat play in the pick and rolls more. Because if Gobert is guarding, let's say, PJ Washington in that starting group, is PJ Washington is not a screening guy most of the time. He's not a great screener. He's not as good a screener as Gafford or Lively. So now if you put a more athletic Cat out on the perimeter, then you have Gobert coming from the backside to disrupt those lobs, because what you saw versus OKC at times, you know, he's only one guy, so he couldn't get all of them, but Chet Holmgren disrupted, especially early in the series, a lot of those lob plays. And so that's a consideration and a matchup issue that the Mavericks got to figure out probably in that first game. And it's interesting to see how Minnesota plays it and who they start their guys on. And then you're talking who I heard Anthony Edwards wants to guard Kyrie. So who's guarding Luka? You know, it's an interesting dynamic of, does Jaden McDaniels guard Luka? You know, um, potentially, Nas Reed. He's more of a center, so he's probably going to be matched up with more of a Washington, Derrick Jones guy. But Derrick Jones is super athletic. He can get by you. Josh Green can get by you and hit open shots. Jaden Hardy is very athletic as well. So the matchups on defense, which both these teams are really good defensively. I think Minnesota was number one in the league this year defensively. It is an exciting, intriguing matchup on who is going to match up with who on the floor. Because I would expect generally Dallas to have Kyrie on Conley, and but then who do you put on Ant? I think Derrick Jones Jr. and or PJ Washington would be on Ant, and then you're kind of, I think it'd be more Derrick Jones Jr. on Anthony Edwards, because Washington's size matching up with one of the two bigger guys is interesting. So, and also you got to deal with their perimeter game, because Karl Anthony Towns, he's one of the best 3-point shooters on the floor when he's on the floor, which is impressive to say that in the evolution of the game the last 20 years. He's 7-footer, and he might be the best 3-point shooter on the floor in the series. So that's kind of crazy to say. So matchups should be pretty interesting, I think, when it comes to defensively. And I'll say this. These are two very good defensive teams. I mentioned Mavericks playing 5-on-8 with the Thunder. It's going to be interesting to see how the refs, because both these teams are physical, if the referees let them play. I think that's a big telltale sign of how this series will go. I think if they let the Mavericks be physical, I think they'll have a better chance. If they play it tight, I think the Minnesota Timberwolves have a better chance. So that'll be pretty interesting, I think. But, just like the Thunder, Minnesota is a little inexperienced. They got guys who've been in the league, but they've never been this far in the playoffs. Pressure goes up. Mavericks are there for a second time in 3 years. Experience level favors the Mavs. That's not the end all be all. I kind of throw it in there with home court advantage a little bit of, in today's NBA, yes, you want home court advantage, but it's not what it used to be on automatic wins almost. So you almost always see those first two games split a lot of the time. So inexperience could come into play, but I do think Anthony Edwards is kind of just one of those guys who does not give an F and will go at you no matter what. The moment's not too big for him, and that's what scares me for the Mavericks. But I did say this is who we wanted. So with that, I predict the Mavericks win in 7. I think it's going to go another 7 games. I think this break and this rest, these last few days for Luka will do wonders for his body in rehabbing his knee and ankle. I think it gives guys like Washington and Jones and Kyrie and maybe Tim Hardaway, Josh Green, these guys to really find their rhythm, get in the gym and put up 500,000, 2,000 shots a day while you're waiting to go in to game plan and practice for Minnesota. So I think this rest could be really beneficial for the Mavericks, for let them get a little healthier and let them get a little more prepared, obviously. So I think it's going to be an exciting series. I really do. I think it's going to be a freaking exciting series between these two young, up and coming, you know, playoff series make rivalries. This could be the birth of a rivalry. I think the Thunder became a rivalry when you had Williams and Shy and Dort, and you just when you start playing guys and you're around the same age and you're trying to jockey who's going to be at top of the mountain. Playoffs is what makes rivalries, man. It's why I hate the Heat to this day, the '06 finals. And then that's why 2011 was so sweet, you know. But playoffs may rival the Spurs and Mavs, in my experience. That's why I don't like the Spurs. But if y'all hire me, I'll be the biggest Spurs fan ever. Same thing for anyone else. Yeah. Anyways, I'm just joking. I'm joking. But ultimately, going to be a fun series to watch. I hope y'all tune in and see what I had to say after game 1, maybe game 2. Doing 2 of these a week. So with that, check out the latest podcast with my co-host Eddie, the original schedule, and Gary Rosenberg. Had some fun. It's a 2-parter. One part is sports, part 1. Part 2 is just 3 Navy guys chopping it up, telling Navy stories. Some telling tales on ourselves a little bit, and let's just say New Orleans was mentioned, pellet guns, probably had a little alcohol thrown in there, saluting squirrels, and just a little teaser in there. Go out there and check it out. But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and sign it off here. Lost my train of thought. That's not the end of the video. I got shout out to Mission 22, of course. Tell Valhalla Project, Camp Hope, all our other programs out there that help Wounded Warrior, or not, Wounded Warrior Project. Let's just throw that out there. I was going to say, help our veterans, any programs that help our vets out there. Oh, man, that was a struggle. I apologize. I'm going to try to do better next time. But peace. I'm out. Love y'all. Comment. Say I'm great. Say I suck. Whatever it is. Share, comment, tell your friends. Later.